Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, the podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Meslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. Sylvia Tabor was born and raised in a small village in southern Poland. She came to the U.S. when she was 13 years old. Sylvia is a carnivore, health coach, former vegan, and biohacker. She loves self-experimentation and quantifying anything and everything, especially health and wellness. Sylvia puts together inspiring and informative posts about carnivore and her experiences on her Instagram, biohacking.chick, which I've been following for a while. And she also has a great sense of humor and is very entertaining and interactive. I'm very excited to have you on, Sylvia. Welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you. That's a great intro. Thank you so much.
Of course. So would love to just start, Sylvia, with, if you wouldn't mind talking folks through your health journey, and how you came about finding carnivore.
Oh, wow. My health journey's been a very, very long one. I feel like I've always had gut issues ever since I was a little kid. And then once, when I was 13, me and my family, we moved to Chicago from Poland. Things just started going south, even worse in terms of my energy and, just moving to a different country and not knowing anyone was hard enough. But then my health, I noticed got much worse. And, my parents, they thought that I was depressed because, I was away from my friends in Poland. But then on top of that, I was just having really low energy and whatnot. And I started playing soccer and I was getting injured all the time. And my search for just trying to get better and feel normal, because I knew it wasn't because, I moved here and I was away from my friends. I knew something internal was going on. So I probably started, quote unquote, biohacking when I was 13 or maybe a little bit later, 15, after I got injured playing soccer, I just started putting on weight like crazy and my energy wasn't the same anymore. And it was even back then when I started experimenting with diets alone. And my first diet was, which was probably very stupid of me, but it was fasting. I had no idea what I was doing, but I figured, you know what? The only thing I know how to lose weight is probably not eat. So I'm not going to eat. So I didn't eat for 2 weeks, which back then it was like, oh my God, you're starving yourself. And that was pretty much the idea behind that. Yes, it wasn't the healthiest mindset, but it did work. And I actually felt amazing. And I noticed a lot of health issues went away with that. But I couldn't keep it up for long. And, the weight came back on and whatnot. And I started feeling bad again. And then after I did that fast, I noticed that eating dairy just wasn't sitting well with me. And so I eliminated that. And through that, after that, I went through so many different diets. I went through, when I went to college, I went the vegan route. Then I upgraded to raw vegan. And then I went and I did fruitarian diet, which is just eating fruits. And again, I followed some health gurus who were doing that, and they were looking healthy and young, and they had the energy and whatnot. So I figured, well, whatever they were preaching at that time, it made sense to me. So I went and tried that. And then that didn't last long because when I went into vegan diet, my diet was already very paleo. I was eating some meat, and then fruits and vegetables and maybe some nuts here and there. And I wasn't eating any grains, any beans. And going from that type of diet into vegan diet didn't actually benefit me in any way whatsoever. But then again, I've watched so many documentaries about veganism and how good it is for the planet and whatnot. And that convinced me basically to go vegan and stick to being vegan despite of feeling unhealthy and just worn down. And so that lasted about 3 years. And after that, I developed a lot of more gut issues, and then Crohn's disease, and my bones started just getting weaker and weaker. And yeah, I wasn't feeling good. And there wasn't a day when I felt like I felt good. I felt strong enough to just go about my day. You know, there were days when I felt so depressed that I honestly struggled with just getting out of my bed. And then I for my depression, I had no idea what to do with that. And then somehow I found psychedelics, which I've experimented a lot since. Not just for depression, but also for like spiritual awakening and whatnot. And then I found ketogenic diet, which helped a little bit. On ketogenic diet, with the standard or traditional ketogenic diet, when it's low in protein, I still struggled a lot. From being vegan and then fruitarian, I developed like very severe eating disorder, which lasted for a very long time. And it took me a lot of energy and a lot of resources or money to get out of. And it was hard. It was the hardest thing in my life that I had to go through. And I feel like I've wasted a lot of my life just going through that. And then with ketogenic diet, although a lot of the symptoms like the binge eating and other things went away, I still struggled a lot because I did have a lot of like the binge eating issues that wouldn't go away. And it's not self-control, because many people who don't go through that, they feel like it's self-control, but it really is not. It's something on a deeper level, like brain level, when your brain just doesn't, it's almost like it's a different brain that takes over, and it turns you into this animal that when it's in front of food, it can't stop itself. And it's weird. I know it sounds weird, but it's just how it works. And although you're stuffed, it's like your stomach is not sending that message to your brain that you've had enough and you should stop eating. So that part of me was still broken when I was on ketogenic diet. And I struggled a lot with that. And, you know, I was going from binge eating to then fasting for several days, because, you know, by then fasting was a sexy thing that everyone started doing. It's like, oh my God, the longer you can fast, the better, you know, and the more glorified you were getting, especially on social media. It's like, oh my God, you did 7 days? Well, I did 14. It's like, okay. And then there's a lot of issues with that as well, especially when it comes to women, when women are already at low weight and then they fast, and that will escalate, you know, that will bring on more health issues, especially with hormones and whatnot. So that can be a danger zone for many people as well. And I've noticed that for myself, that I would use that a lot, especially after eating way too much. So then I found Carnivore Diet. And when I heard about it, especially, you know, coming from my vegan mindset, I thought, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, these people are gonna die, like, after months. They're gonna, you know, I don't know, their colon is gonna just disintegrate or something. Yeah. They're just gonna, I had the worst, you know, ideas of the whole thing, because, you know, I was fed this idea that, yes, we're supposed to eat plants. And I was raised that way too. When I was growing up in Poland, I lived on a farm where we did grow everything on our own land, but we also had a lot of animals that we lived off of as well. But it was always there that you have to eat vegetables for the fiber, for the probiotics, prebiotics, and whatnot. And it was just very hard for me to wrap my mind around it. But at the same time, I was having a lot of health problems that just weren't going away with keto. And my version of keto, it wasn't that I was eating a lot of processed foods, because now you have the keto cookies and you have all this other stuff, that's basically to me is like the, gluten-free cakes and whatnot that's out there. So to me, that keto cookies and all that stuff, it's still garbage. Yes, I know it can help a lot of people transition and do a little bit better, but in my mind, that wasn't food. And I did experiment with some snacks that I would get from like the companies. They would send it to me, but it just wasn't my thing. So I would stick to things like avocados. I would have sometimes sardines, because when I did keto, I was mostly plant-based, and it was funny because I still had that vegan mentality, and just going to a store and trying to buy a piece of fish was just, it took me probably an hour to convince myself to buy fish or get eggs, because I was still stuck in that, vegan dogma that, no, you should not be eating animal anything.
Yeah.
But when I did do the keto, I did have some fish, occasional eggs, which I did react to. Like I would have not allergic reaction, but I was slightly intolerant to them. So I would have that still occasionally. And then mostly avocados and pili nuts, which are now very popular in the keto world, and they're amazing. And that was it. And pretty much it was very clean keto for me.
Yeah.
So, and with that alone, I was still having so many problems. So I figured, you know what, I'm just going to give carnivore a try, just 30 days, and I'll see how it goes. If anything, I can always stop and go back to, eating plants. So I tried after 2 weeks, my gut issues went away, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And although I felt like I was actually gaining weight, putting on weight, I'm like, you know what? I don't care. My stomach is feeling amazing. My joints are not hurting. My hair is growing back, and it's much stronger, and my skin cleared up significantly. And then my eyesight improved a lot too. So I'm like, I'm just going to stick with it. And the first 2 weeks was fine. Going towards the second week, I noticed a huge energy dip. And at that time, I almost gave up, because I was like, you know what, I feel like I'm sleepwalking. I just can't do this. And working full time and then, just trying to do the life thing, it's just hard. And then I went back to thinking, you know what, all those symptoms that I had went away. And again, all the other benefits I gained, I'm just going to do the 30 days, and I'm just going to stick with it. And if my energy doesn't improve, I'm going to make changes. And it was literally maybe on day 17th when I woke up one day and everything, my energy was through the roof, and it was crazy. It was like you flipped the switch. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And then I realized that it probably took some time to transition from burning glucose to burning ketones for energy. And in the past, I never had that really, really low energy when I did that, when I started ketogenic diet. So I didn't think that this time it would be so severe. But again, I guess it does happen. And I didn't really supplement with anything. And I do feel that, for the transition period, it is smart to transition with some supplements, especially electrolytes and whatnot. But But yeah, I stuck with it, and after the first, 17 days, my energy came back, and yeah, it's actually been half a year now that
Wow.
that I've been carnivore, and I don't think I'm going to be going back. But then again, you never know if anything goes bad, or if adding something in will benefit me more, then I'm certainly not opposed to it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Thank you for sharing that story, Sylvia, and being so open. That's really fascinating, sort of your whole lifetime of biohacking and the whole journey you've gone through. And I appreciate your transparency and being so open about, the mental effects, gut issues, Crohn's, bone mineral density, hormones. These are all things that, we see in these groups all the time, but I think your story really brings it to life for people. And it's really interesting. A couple questions I wanted to ask you. I personally, I wouldn't call it binge eating or disordered eating, but I did have a lack of self-control for a while, or at least with food volume, not with food quality. Because I came from a background of sports and cutting weight for sports, I sort of forgot how to eat normally for a long time.
Yeah.
What was that like for you when you say binge eating? Was it, going out and eating junk food, or was it just disordered around how much volume and never feeling full and things like that?
Yeah, it was never going out and eating just, 10 pizzas or anything like that. It was I couldn't have, let's say, a handful of macadamia nuts. It would be a pound of macadamia nuts, and
Yeah.
after eating a pound of macadamia nuts, it was still, I still felt hungry. It was weird. Like my stomach would be extended. I would look like I was pregnant, but my brain would still scream for nutrition, for food. I'm like, and that was so weird to me because I could even eat like 5 avocados in one sitting and I would be still hungry. And then I would hear these experts say, eat healthy fats, they're very satisfying. I'm like,
Right.
well, I'm eating healthy fats. They're not satisfying. It's not working for me. And I remember one time I had a jar, I don't know if it was 8-ounce jar or 16-ounce jar of ghee. So I had I had it in my office and I was so hungry. So, and I had nothing else. And I ate the whole thing in one sitting and I was still hungry. I'm like, something's wrong. I'm like, this isn't normal. I'm like, how can anybody eat this? And then I put pili nuts on top of that too. So, and I was still hungry. Like, it's not normal. And at that point, I knew there was something broken, with that gut brain connection. And, it took me a while to figure that out. And now I finally feel normal. That is absolutely gone. And after I have a pound of steak, I feel so satisfied. I get this signal that basically if I eat one more bite, I'm going to throw up. And I never had that before. And for me, a pound of meat sometimes is not enough. Sometimes it's too much, but I know when it's too much because my body is telling me, and I'm not force feeding myself. I'm just listening to my body and eating as much as I need to eat in order for it to operate right. So for me, that alone is totally worth it. And, all the other benefits. I mean, how can eating meat be bad for you if you're experiencing so much healing on it?
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know exactly what you're saying. I think some of the mental aspects of the carnivore diet are really profound. And I like how you connect it to the gut health because, like you said, it's not a self-discipline thing, and people are made to believe it's all self-discipline and self-control. But oftentimes you're just putting the wrong foods in your body, and that's changing your brain chemistry. So I really like how you tie those together. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other benefits you've experienced on the carnivore diet? And I know you had a great Instagram post about this just yesterday, I believe.
Today, this morning.
Today.
Yeah. The other health benefits. Well, let's talk about hormones, because I feel like those are huge for women. And just going from vegan and not having my period for almost, I want to say, over 3 years. And then I got it back when I went keto, but it was still very irregular, and that was kind of crazy. And now on a carnivore diet, I feel like everything is just in balance. So I feel like that alone is a huge benefit. And then, body composition, again, it's just something that on a carnivore diet, for me at least, it happens. Like, I don't really I'm not doing carnivore to have abs or, to do lifts that are, impressive to anyone. I just want to be healthy and I want to feel normal. And I feel like, stronger bones and better body composition is just a side effect of healing. So I think that's another huge one. And then sleep. Oh my God, my sleep has gotten so much better, and which is interesting because, even on the ketogenic diet, a lot of health experts, they'll tell you that, you need a little bit of carbs before you go to bed to have a good sleep. And I actually was tracking it with the Oura Ring, and that was totally not true. My deep sleep was so much better, and the quality of my sleep has gotten so much better on carnivore diet that I was like, okay, maybe carbs are not the way to go. And then I tried adding in a little bit of blueberries just to see what happens. And actually my sleep got worse just from eating a cup of blueberries one night. I'm like, okay. And waking up in the morning was really hard. So sleep is another huge benefit that I've noticed. Quality of sleep, I would say.
That's really interesting. Sorry, I just want to dig into that a little bit more, Sylvia, because I am obsessive about my sleep, and I track my sleep data with the Oura Ring as well. And I've noticed that my sleep is excellent on the carnivore diet, but if I eat late in the day, so, anytime within 3 hours of sleeping, or even before then, if I eat a large meal at, say, 5 or 6 p.m., my heart rate will be elevated when I do sleep, and my heart rate variability will drop, which is you want higher heart rate variability. That's a sign of recovery for folks who don't know. And I get actually less deep sleep. But I wonder if, the Oura Ring is a great measure for sleep, but maybe someone on a carbohydrate-based diet needs more sleep, needs higher quality sleep to recover. And those on a carnivore diet might actually need less deep sleep and less sleep overall. How do you think about that?
I would agree, because I've noticed that, sometimes I'm fine even on 5 hours of sleep, whereas when I did eat carbs, I had to sleep at least 12 hours, seriously 12 hours, and I would still feel like I needed more.
Wow.
And what's funny is that after MRSA, I had MRSA last year, and after that, I had a lot of gut issues, even more gut issues after all the antibiotics that I was pumped with in the hospital. I've decided to go vegan again, like hardcore vegan, and do like more carbohydrate rich vegan, but not raw, but cooked this time. So I figured, well, that's going to help my stomach for sure. So I did that. And when I was doing it, my sleep was just horrible. Aside from, coming out of the hospital and trying to heal, I feel like everything was even worse than ever before. And like I said, with the carbs, I could sleep literally whole day. And at that time it worked fine because, I didn't work, so I could sleep all day. But now I'm noticing that on carnivore, 5 hours of sleep and I'm totally fine. And I wake up in the morning. I don't need before an alarm. I actually don't need an alarm, and I'm fine. I can function throughout the whole day. And, my schedule is usually 4 a.m. to like 9 p.m. or maybe 10 p.m. sometimes. And I'm fine with that. And whatever, hours of sleep I get, I'm functioning just amazingly. And like you said, I feel that I would agree. On carnivore diet, you don't need as much sleep. You don't need as much recovery time, even after a workout. I've noticed that as well, that the recovery time, the muscle soreness just basically is non-existent. I could do a pretty intense workout one day, and then the next day I could probably do it again.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Sylvia, great to hear more about the female perspective, about how your hormones improved. That's amazing, and how your body composition has improved. And I will say, you shrug that off as sort of a side benefit, but you are in very good shape. I would encourage folks to check out Sylvia's Instagram for that, to see the type of changes you can achieve on this way of eating.
Thank you.
Of course, and you mentioned gut health. How has sort of digestion improved? I know you've talked about skin health before. What are some of those other benefits you've experienced?
Well, I always, well, not always, but even on ketogenic diet, I would struggle with a lot of digestive issues and a lot of red rashes on my stomach, especially on my stomach and my hands and legs. And that kind of comes with Crohn's, though. And then a lot of bathroom trips, basically, and most of my day, sometimes I wouldn't know like how my day would go, like if I would be spending majority of my day on a toilet or
Right.
otherwise. So it was it was hard because one day I would be okay, and then I couldn't even make plans with my friends because I'm like, okay, I don't know how my gut is gonna be. Like if we go out somewhere and then something happens, and it was just really hard even on my social life. So going to carnivore, I know that I'm going to feel amazing. Like, I know I won't experience any of those issues. So, and, not to mention the bloat is gone. The rushes on my stomach are gone. And just, I'm amazed how good my digestion is, because I don't feel like a lot of people are so concerned that, meat is so hard to digest, which is so false. Because I read this book. It was called, it's funny, it was called You Must Eat Meat. And it talks about how our stomachs are purely carnivore, meaning that our stomachs are very proficient at digesting meat. And so when we digest it, it basically, all there's left is just a little bit of liquid. And many of my clients, they do want to try carnivore diet, and they're very, they worry about, fiber and the need for it. And
Right.
sometimes, when I transitioned, yes, I didn't go to the bathroom for probably 2 weeks. And honestly, I was happy about this. When you have Crohn's and you're in the bathroom 24/7 pretty much, and you don't go for 2 weeks, you're a happy camper. So to me, that was a good thing. And the thing is, like, I did not feel constipated. I had no digestive issues or anything like that. And many people worry about that transitioning because they still have that mentality that meat will, sit in their intestines and just putrefy and cause a lot of inflammation and disease and cancer or whatnot, which is totally false. So when it comes to digestion, I feel like meat is amazing. And it's definitely amazing on the gut as well. There are many stories on meatheals.com from people who struggle with IBS and with Crohn's disease and other digestive issues. And they come out and they say, oh my God, just, 2 weeks on a carnivore diet and all the symptoms they've been dealing with, they're gone. And, and that's why a lot of people just stick with it.
Yeah, that's really profound. And I think, there's so many different issues and symptoms that people find relief with on a carnivore diet. And I think gut health, you describe it very well, that it can just control your life. I've gone through periods like that in different ways. And it just really restricts you socially, what you can do. You feel trapped. So that's really powerful, in addition to the other benefits you've experienced. I think it would be helpful at this point, Sylvia, can you just talk a little bit about, what an average day of eating looks like for you?
An average day. Well, like I said, I wake up pretty much at 4 a.m. And then I have my steak at 4:30, my first steak. So I eat very early, mostly because of, like I said, I'm already very, very lean and I want to keep my hormones happy. So I eat early because I know if I don't, then I'm going to get into trouble. So I do have my first steak and it's probably, I want to say it's pound. I don't measure, but I would say it's a pound of steak. And it's, now I'm doing another experiment with, with meat. So I'm not doing right now any grass-fed. And I know a lot of people think that you have to do grass-fed, but, I'm experimenting with just grain-fed, basically Costco, ribeyes and New York strips. And I want to see, omega-3, how that's going to affect my, blood omega-3s.
Yeah.
So that's my experiment. So yeah, so in the morning, I'll have about a pound of either ribeye or New York strip. And then, I'll have another meal. The latest, I would say 3 p.m. And I don't ever eat after 3 p.m. because, like you've mentioned before, eating too close to bed is not ideal for me either. But if I eat, more than, let's say, a pound of meat, then that doesn't really work with my sleep. So my latest meal would be before 3 p.m. and that's another pound to pound and a half of, either New York strip or ribeye. But then again, I have days when I am a little bit more active and I need more. And there have been days when I would eat about 4 pounds of meat. So it does vary, but on average, yes, it's probably 2 to 2.5 pounds of meat in a day and 2 meals.
Yeah, that's great. That's super interesting. And just to give people context, roughly how much do you weigh?
My latest DEXA scan showed 125. Again, I don't weigh myself. I don't really believe in weighing yourself every single day because that can be harmful to your brain health.
Yeah, absolutely.
So 125.
That's remarkable. So just for folks listening, that's 2.5 pounds. Someone who weighs 125, as another marker, I'm about 170 pounds. And I eat, probably on average 3 to 3.5 pounds a day. So, and people, and I'm not incredibly active. I lift weights twice a week. I walk a lot every day. I live in the city. I don't own a car, but, to make this diet work and get the right amount of nutrition, it's important to not undereat. That's really, really essential.
Yes.
And something you talked about, Sylvia, that I found super interesting was the grain-fed versus grass-fed and omega-3. So just to give folks listening a little bit of context there, Coming out of paleo, especially, a lot of people say, you have to eat grass-fed, grass-finished meat, but really all meat is, even including quote unquote grain-fed, the conventional kind you would buy in a grocery store, is grass-fed for at least 80% of its life. And then it's just finished on grain to sort of fatten it up, give it some marbling. And a lot of the stuff in the grocery store labeled grass-fed, actually isn't even grass-finished. But the reason a lot of people promote grass-finished meat is, one, they say it's more sustainable for the environment, which isn't necessarily true, because oftentimes you get lower production volume out of those types of cows. And two, they say it's a healthier omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. But when you actually look at the numbers, it's not that substantial. The total amount of omega-6 in grass-fed versus grain-fed meat is very similar. And if you were to eat, chicken or pork, which is much higher in omega-6 content, or, use any types of seed oils or eat a lot of nuts, that would more than make up for any difference in grass-fed versus grain-finished beef overall. So I just wanted to give a little bit of context there for folks. And I know, Sylvia, that you had experimented with testing your omega-3 levels previously, and you've done some other tests, such as a telomere test. Can you talk a little bit about those and how your health has improved on these?
Yeah. So in terms of the omega-3 testing, I did do one that I was eating grain-fed meat, but then I was still eating seafood and some chicken and pork. So, and then I did the same test, and I was eating grass-fed and still chicken and seafood. And the difference between the two was so minimal that I don't think that when people are just eating grass-fed because they're worried about their omega-3s, I don't think it's worth it. And so that was that. And the current test that I'm doing is just beef, basically. So I'm living off of Costco beef for a month now, almost. And I'm getting ready to test, and without any seafood or anything like that. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to work out, because, a lot of health experts out there, they're making it sound like it's so dangerous, like you're going to get loaded with omega-6s if you eat, grain-fed beef, which I don't think is true, but, I guess I'll see once I get my results back.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I like how you're, taking in the science, reading the research, but also being willing to self-experiment and be objective and test things in your own body. I think that's really powerful.
Right.
And I know you also did a test on keto, I believe it was, with the omega-3, and you were eating more seafood. And how did your results there compare to on carnivore with less seafood?
Oh my God, it was, I was actually surprised, because I was supplementing with what I thought was great, omega-3 fish oil. And then, I think I was actually still eating, the salmon raw, which was supposed to be really high in omega-3s. And I was shocked how low my omega-3s were on ketogenic compared to then carnivore. I'm like, okay, well, I guess right now I'm saving so much more money, not buying, any omega-3 supplements, which I actually felt worse when I was taking them, because I could feel a little bit of inflammation coming from them. And I know there's a lot of issues when it comes to processing, omega-3 oils. And then there are some companies coming out with the algae oil, which does absolutely nothing. So if people are taking it, please don't waste your money. And then I remember there was one doctor that was frustrated with the omega-3 supplement industry, and she kind of looked into it, how everything was being processed and whatnot. And it turns out that, if once they cut the fish and they have to pretty much freeze it right away in order for those oils not to oxidize. And no company is doing that right now. So it really starts with the fish, with the catching process and all of that, with the, processing and handling. And there are not many companies who are doing it. And despite with all the claims that, these are so amazing and cold process and whatnot, I find that not to be true. And again, I'm just happy that I stopped taking any of that because I honestly feel so much healthier from not taking it. Yeah. And I'll rather spend, the $100 that I would spend on omega-3 pills. I'd rather buy a lot of steak with that. So, I'm pretty much done with supplementing any omega-3s.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, and then you have mentioned the telomeres testing for anti-aging or for how old you are on a cellular level. So yeah, I did that, and I run one when I did do keto, and I think it showed that I was 1 year older than my actual age. And then I did one on carnivore, and I think it was after 3 months on the carnivore diet, and it showed that I was 5 years younger. And of course, granted that this test is not super accurate, but if you have a base and then you improve from the base, I think that's a good measurement. It's a good sign. So yeah, I'm thinking of doing it again, that test at the end of this year, just out of curiosity, to see how it goes, if I'm improving or if I'm stuck at the same point or maybe getting worse. I don't know, but it'd be fun to see what happens.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think you make a great point there about the relative increase or relative decrease in telomeres, or at least your biological age, or biological age. That's really interesting. And the omega-3 point is also super fascinating to me. I'd love to hear, some doctors or researchers speculate about the mechanism there for why your omega-3 is increasing, even though you're eating, theoretically less omega-3 rich foods. So that's really fascinating. And then one more test you kind of ran is with a blood glucose monitor, and a lot of folks, who are eating, 2-3 pounds of meat of meat a day, and folks are worried about, oh, is that too much protein? Is that going to spike your blood glucose? Is that going to drive your insulin out of control? So you did a test around this, and what did you find?
Oh yeah. And even prior to that testing, I would do a lot of just my own glucose test and keto tests, just to see how my ketos would get affected with eating so much meat. And it turns out that, everybody worries about gluconeogenesis, and it just doesn't happen. I think you would have to eat incredible amount of meat in order to get there. And then again, a lot of people think that gluconeogenesis is actually unhealthy, but there's benefit to it. And Rob Wolf, I guess he was getting frustrated with that as well. And he made a post on his website about the whole thing. He made a video, and I'm not as smart as Rob Wolf, and I can't really explain it as well, but if people want to check it out, he has a lot of good info about gluconeogenesis and protein intake and mTOR activation, all that good stuff on his website. So I highly recommend checking that out. But yeah, from my own experimentation, my glucose was just fine. When my A1C was perfect. I only did, from the test that I did with the continuous glucose meter, I added a little bit of fruit just to see what would happen. And it did dramatically spike up. But aside from that, eating just meat, my glucose was perfect. It would never go over 100. It would remain basically between 60 and 95 throughout the 2 weeks that I had the continuous glucose meter on. And then with ketones, it's actually funny because when I was on the ketogenic diet and I would supplement with the BHB salts, and I would take in a lot of MCT oil and brain octane oil and whatnot just to spike my ketones up. They would get up to 3.5 and with all that supplementation. And on the carnivore diet, they just stay like around 1.5, and the highest I would get was 5, almost 6 millimoles of ketones. And I find it funny because I didn't supplement with anything, and all that meat that I was eating did not cause any, decrease in ketones. If anything, it only helped. So I'm like, well, all this information out there is not very accurate. That's why I like experimenting and finding out for myself, versus listening to all these experts advising on this and that.
Yeah, I truly believe in that as well. And I think the fact that you share so much information on your own experiments also benefits a ton of other people. So really appreciate that. And I'm curious what types of, so you talked about, focusing mainly on beef for this coming experiment, to see how it affects your omega-3, omega-6 blood levels. What other foods do you typically include or think are important in a carnivore diet? Do you include organ meats? Do you think those are essential? Do you still drink coffee? And what other supplements are you taking? I know you're very active. You do Pilates, long bike trips, other types of exercise. Are you supplementing with magnesium or anything like that?
Currently I am not. I'm not taking, there's one supplement that I am taking right now, which I'm of course experimenting with. It's called Niagen, and it's great for like ATP production and whatnot, just energy and brain health. So I'm taking that, but aside from just that one, no, I'm not. And I don't feel like I need to take anything. And in the past, I did run nutritional deficiencies test as well. That was, I think, 3 months into carnivore diet, and I had no deficiencies, so I feel like I don't need to supplement with anything. But when I did do that long bike ride, at that time, I did take BHB salts because I would cramp up so bad. The ride that I did was over 200 miles.
Wow.
And it was so hot. It's never been this hot in May in Chicago. So I wasn't ready for it. I did it, but it was almost 100 degrees outside. And thank God I had like electrolytes and other stuff with me, because I don't think I would be able to do it. Although it was still much easier doing that carnivore diet, because the year before I did it on basically plant-based keto, and I was struggling like with energy. It was really hard. I almost called my mom to come and get me because I thought I was never I wasn't gonna make it. But a carnivore diet, it was much easier with the electrolytes and whatnot. But right now, no supplements aside from that Niagen. And what was your other question? Coffee.
Yeah, coffee and organ meats as well.
So coffee I do have sometimes, but my gut just doesn't do well with it. So, and it's, even black coffee. And yes, my gut is still pretty sensitive, and I'm working on fixing it. I feel like just eating meat is actually improving my gut health a lot, because now I'm able to tolerate eggs very well, where before I was getting weird reaction to them. But coffee is still a little bit harsh on my stomach. But yes, I will have it sometimes, knowing the consequences. And then organ meat, I do like organ meat, but I don't feel like it's necessary. Sometimes it can be, especially some people can overdo it. And if you overdo it on liver, especially, it's so high in vitamin A, you can get into trouble with that as well. So I do think that occasional organ meats are great, but I don't feel like they're really, really necessary. Like, you know, if you don't like it, I don't feel like you have to have it. But, you know, I personally, I do like them. I do enjoy occasional liver, or when I was in Austin, I tried a Wagyu beef tongue, which was so amazing. I'm like, oh my God, how did I never had this before? So now I'm kind of addicted to it, but I need to wait to get it before, after I'm done with my experiment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you mentioned also one thing I just wanted to touch on is during the adaptation period or transition period, how some of these things may be different. So what would you recommend in terms of electrolyte supplementation, for folks getting started on a carnivore diet?
You know, I think that actually, the ketone supplements are very beneficial. They're high in magnesium, they're high in sodium, and I feel like those actually absorb better than just regular salt. You know, many people will supplement with just salt and water, but I feel like the ketone supplements are better absorbable. And so I would that would be probably the only thing that I would recommend supplementing during that transition time. And that's probably it. I mean, being outside in the sun, I feel that helps a lot too with energy. I noticed that for myself, you know, just when I would get like really low, I would just go outside and sit outside in the sun, and that would help me a lot too. And not many people realize how beneficial it is to go outside, you know, especially people that struggle with skin conditions like maybe psoriasis or eczema or things like that. You know, vitamin D is still very important, and you can't get that from a pill. So going outside, being in nature is another quote unquote supplement that I feel like it's so necessary, but many people just don't take that, you know, into consideration.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's really interesting. I think it's so much more than just vitamin D, and trying to think that you can, mimic the benefits of being out in the sun, something that's so ancient and has so many effects on the body, most of which we probably don't know, just by taking a vitamin D pill. I think that's arrogant. I think, you know, it can make sense to supplement with vitamin D if you're, you know, in a northern climate, you don't see the sun for months at a time, but just trying to spend more time out in the sun, I think, is incredibly important. And Sylvia, that brings me to, I'm curious, how have sort of your biohacking views and behaviors changed on carnivore? Like things like red light therapy, sauna use, you know, probably some of the supplementation you were doing. How have some of those activities changed on carnivore, the things you've stopped, or how has your overall view of that changed?
Oh my God, a lot. And I'm saving so much money right now. I feel like, despite the fact that, you know, ribeyes and New York strips are expensive, it's weird because I feel like I'm less obsessed with it in a way. Like, I don't feel the need to do like cryotherapy or to do infrared sauna, because before, when I struggled with a lot of inflammation, I felt like I needed to do it, because if I didn't, then my body would just explode from the amount of inflammation that I was dealing with. And now all of that, it just calmed down, and my brain calmed down, and you know, I'm into like all the techie stuff for biohacking, and I would spend so much money on that, and now I feel like I don't need that stuff. It's weird, because with carnivore, for me, I feel like a lot of like this weird anxiety and like weird brain craziness went away. And so I would say that right now I'm saving so much money just not from not feeling the need to do all the different biohacking that I used to do. And I basically came back to basics, water, meat, sun, and just being out in nature and just taking advantage of that. And aside from meat, everything else is pretty much free. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's almost like carnivore is the ultimate biohack, in that sense.
Exactly.
And I'm curious, Sylvia, you from your Instagram, I know you travel at least a decent amount. You recently went on a trip to Machu Picchu, I believe, and have just traveled around the States a good amount. What are some tips you would have for a carnivore while traveling about?
You know what? I actually find that being carnivore and traveling is so easier than maybe being keto, because for me, especially when we had to do a lot of flying. So when I was in Peru, sometimes the Airbnbs that we were staying at, they did not have like any cooking equipment. And I have no problem eating raw meat. So maybe you've seen me eat raw meat and maybe a raw egg yolk. And in Poland, when I was growing up, steak tartare was just a normal thing. And to me, when I was in Peru, I was okay with eating raw meat. So it was not a problem for me. But in the United States, when I do have to fly or travel somewhere, I don't need snacks with me, because I'll usually have like maybe a bigger ribeye for breakfast or before I fly somewhere. And that will hold me off like pretty much throughout the whole day until I get to eat again. And so that's not a problem. And there are places everywhere where you can get a really good steak, and you can even go to, Whole Foods and they already have something made that you can just eat, grab and go. And you just have to be careful on those places that make it already, because when you look in the ingredients, they still use like canola oil, which is surprising to me that places like Whole Foods does that. But yeah, I feel like it's so easy. And then there are things like, biltong. There's a great company called the Brooklyn Biltong. So you can have that, and it is very lean. So I don't know, maybe mix that with ghee, and that would be pretty simple. But I find it very easy, and especially when traveling, because you can find meat pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, that's great. Those are some great tips for folks as well. I just wanted to ask you, this has been absolutely excellent, Sylvia. Really, really appreciate your time. I wanted to ask, what is your favorite cut of meat and what's your favorite way to cook it?
My favorite cut of meat. I want to say, well, my favorite place to get my favorite cut of meat, because not all the places have the same, even though it's the same cut, it doesn't taste the same. So I get, when I'm not experimenting, I get my New York strips from US Wellness Meats. And I kid you not, their New York strips, they taste, when you make them, they taste like fresh melted butter. And it's so amazing. So that's my favorite. But then when it comes to conventional or grain-fed, I do like ribeyes, and I would say New York strips too. Like those are my two favorite, New York strips and ribeyes. And what was the second question? How do I make it?
Yeah.
Well, I have New Wave grill, which is just like electric type of grill that you put in a kitchen top, the top, and you can it literally takes like 8 minutes to make a really good steak. it's still nice and juicy inside. And I kind of like it on a rawish state when it's still very raw inside and just warm outside. So I that's how I like it. That's how I make it.
Yeah, you're making me hungry. Well, thanks so much for your time, Sylvia. This has been incredible. I think folks will get a ton of value out of this. Just let me know where folks can find out more about you and can find you online.
Well, thank you. My coaching services are on biohackingchick.com, and I started a blog there that I'm not very active with, but I'm hoping to change that. And then I'm most active on my Instagram, where I post everything from, food to my experiments, and that's at biohacking.chick. And that's basically it.
Yeah, excellent. Everyone should definitely go check out and follow Sylvia on Instagram. I love your posts and get a lot of value out of them. And thanks again so much for your time, Sylvia. This has been great.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered? Or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Carnivore Cast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.